Hey everyone, welcome back to Film Ranks. Today I want to talk about Spider-Man. I want to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I want to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And I know that this is really supposed to be about Brand New Day, but you can't really understand Brand New Day without No Way Home. And I gotta say, Brand New Day, I gotta say that Brand New Day is a much better film for a standalone Spider-Man film with Tom Holland than whatever happened in Brand for whatever happened in No Way Home. So to talk about Brand New Day, you know, I gotta say that this film, like I said, it was a better standalone Spider-Man film than what I've seen before in Homecoming and Far From Home. Also, because of the villains, they were much better than what we had previously. Besides Vulture, I still think Vulture was quite good, but I just feel like he was a little too old. Um, yeah, Michael Keaton. I think we could have gotten a younger actor to play Vulture, but it is what it is. So, yeah, that's what it is. And I wasn't a big fan of Mysterio. I think Jake Gyllenhaal played the role well, but I just don't like Mysterio. Um, the whole illusion thing, it's like, it's not really like a superpower. Like, it appears to be a superpower, but I just think his villain aura isn't just that great. Compared to Green Goblin, like, doesn't even come close. Like, Green Goblin's a real villain. Like, when you think about Green Goblin, you just really think of this maniac that just really wants to destroy Peter Parker's life and will do it with destructive force, where Mysterio will lie and show illusions and do all of these sort of things to like create this propaganda against Spider-Man and make people hate him, whereas these other villains like are actively trying to destroy Spider-Man's life. So that's what I'm gonna say about Mysterio. I didn't expect to talk about Far From Home, but uh, because this is all in the Spider-Man universe with Tom Holland, uh, I just thought, what, might as well just throw that in there. But yeah, and aside from that, um, so in Brand New Day, the villains, getting back on track, one of them is Scorpion, which I think is good. You know, it was a really interesting character to put. Not as iconic, but still a good enough villain to add in the movie. Um, and to not spoil anything for anybody, I'm not going to mention the main villain here, but I will say that that villain, it's a bit like, I don't think anybody would have guessed it, honestly. Like, if you didn't know anything about this film at all, or didn't, like, somehow already had it, if you didn't already have it spoiled somehow, or, like, knew nothing, because not even the trailer showed who the main villain is. So, I'm gonna get to that in the spoiler section if you haven't seen this. Um, I mean, if you have seen it, but even if you haven't seen it, you can feel free to watch the spoiler section if you dare, but I'll leave that up to you. So, as far as non spoilers go, I'm just gonna say that this film did decent. It did a decent enough job. Spider Man evolves better as a character, I will say that. Um, and I hope because of the bad decisions that were made in the last two films, this film and the last one, that whatever comes next is better. But I'm gonna be very honest, it's hard to say that it's going to be better. Like, it truly is, based off of the post-credit scene. So that's as far as I'm gonna say for this film. and I think it deserves an 8 out of 10. Um, yeah, like straight up an 8 out of 10. And honestly, I'm gonna give the same rating to No Way Home. Um, I think that film is like an 8 out of 10, but man, like okay, so No Way Home should have been a 9, and I'm sure a lot of people is gonna say, "Oh, it's a 10, it's an 11." And most people are gonna say that only because that film had all the iconic villains, and we got 3 Spider-Man. So that's really like the selling point of this film. But when you really get into the story of Spider-Man wanting to erase people's minds with Doctor Strange and messing up the spell a few number of times, that part is really frustrating, and it messes with this film too because he continuously makes poor choices, like just bad decisions. And it's not just because they're inherently bad, but because he could have done things way better. So that's where this film did not meet my expectations. Was Brand New Day. So with that being said, enough vagueness. I'm gonna get into spoilers. It's been long enough. The main villain in this film is somebody we would not have guessed at all. You know, and like I said, this is spoilers. It's not gonna just be like light spoilers. Like I'm into deep, like this is gonna be deep spoiler territory. So you don't want the entire film ruined, just skip this part entirely, because that's all it's gonna be from here on. So the main villain in this movie is Jean Grey from X-Men. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Honestly, I would have probably still never have guessed that. Even on my worst guesses, I would not have guessed that. And played none other by Sadie Sink, who was rumored already to be in the film as like a Spider Woman or Spider Girl. That was totally off base. So she plays Jean Grey, and honestly, she does a good representation or portrayal of Jean Grey, but I just didn't like Jean Grey in this film, like as a character. Like I just am convinced that after watching the first 3 X-Men with Hugh Jackman, like debuting as Wolverine, I really don't like Jean Grey as a character. And just like how she's this villain and very malicious and extremely powerful, it's more so that like it just seems like she's way too powerful for like the problems she has, where it feels like it could be fixed by therapy, you know? And at some point in this film, I thought everybody needs therapy, you know? MJ needs therapy, the Punisher, Spider-Man, Jean Grey, like everybody needs therapy in this film. Like they all got messed up, like they have all made up. Sorry, everybody needs therapy in this film. Like Spider-Man, the Punisher, Jean Grey, MJ, Ned. Like everybody needs therapy in this film. Like they're all living in trauma, awkwardness, like just something that isn't normal at all. So even with Jean Grey, like I liked that at least in this film, in this film, Jean Grey like felt a little bit more like a likable character by the end of the film. Um, Even was like when she's with Spider-Man as he got shot, and she really did seem like she can be a much better character, but now that's pretty much an opportunity that seems like, well, now we don't really know, because she starts all this chaos, and even after Spider-Man gets shot and is in the hospital, she just disappears like nothing happened. Literally, like, she was going to kill a whole bunch of people in town using her telepathic powers, and she just escapes. How convenient. Like, nobody would recognize her face after destroying a building and killing a bunch of people and trying to, like, sneak into a government facility. You know, it's just ridiculous. Even for a superhero film, it's really ridiculous. Like, that's the most insane amount of plot armor you're just gonna see. And it's probably gonna only get worse from here, if I'm gonna be completely honest, because Spider-Man will return, apparently. So, you know, if you see the post-credit scene, it is, like, by far the most confusing, because it appears that he's in space. And I don't know if this is supposed to be an Easter egg, or he's actually gonna travel to space or be somewhere in space. I'm not sure what to make of that scene. But it's in the movie, just way after you read all the credits. So there's also that. But like I said, those are the things that, you know, I had the most issues with. The other thing that I mentioned earlier too was that there was a spell that was supposed to erase everyone's mind. Okay, why didn't Peter just ever announce his identity to MJ or Ned at the end of No Way Home? Like, to what degree did he think that it was going to be a bad idea to do that, if all he wants in this new movie is to do that? And he wastes years doing that. By the way, like, all of these years that his friends are in university, where he could have already done this in the last film, he ends up revealing his identity. And then it, like, backfires, because it turns out MJ didn't really love him. At least that's what she says. It's not what I believe, because then they're hanging out. Like, okay, you just literally broke this guy's heart, and now you want to invite him into your apartment? Like, that just didn't happen? Like, where is the continuity? You know, like, where is the logical flow? Like, you know, if someone genuinely isn't into you like that, you should at least give them some time to at least have grief about it. And I'm glad that she, like, still invited him to the apartment in a weird way, because he was finally with his friends. But like I said, why did it need to take that long into the film to get to that point? It was just so illogical to me. Like, I don't know. That to me just made it feel like, well, yeah, like, he could have done that so long ago. Like, even in the beginning of the film, if that's the way they wanted to go about it, but it wasn't like that. So anyways, I would say that this film, where it does really well, is the evolution of Spider-Man. Like I said, Spider-Man feeling of being in the lab, working on the gizmos, all the spider tech. And it feels more like the video games too. It's like the web grenades and other, like, web shooter that, you know, like the web shooters, of course, that helps tie up the enemies and, you know, pretty much keep them at bay. Like all that stuff is really cool, but then we get that cool feeling from the early 2000s was like the natural webs that Toby had in those films. But it's different because it's just like a hormonal shift is what they explain in the film, which is kind of hilarious to be honest, but it's literally like he's possessed by a demon, which is a spider, which doesn't really even make sense. Like why is he possessed? I don't know. He just has an imbalance of hormones is what they say. And you see it with his eyes, like a Paranormal Activity movie, and he just starts trying to kill whatever gets in his way. um, and not just anything. It's like this really just starts with fighting Scorpion, but like I said, like that's not really the way Spider-Man does things. It's almost like he has the symbiote on him. So yeah, he starts becoming symbiote Spider-Man in a way without the symbiote, but because like he's spending so much time without friends and isolation and this deep sort of depression that it's actually making his powers stronger. So it's a very weird explanation to why he's, more natural now. But I think it's a weak explanation. I just think it would have been better to say that he's evolving, that his powers got stronger as a result of all the battles that he's been fighting. And similar to a Super Saiyan, like once he's reached a level where all he has is anger and disdain, is that he unlocks this new ability. But the explanation in this film just kind of felt weak. So that's why it just sounds like, oh, like he's just having hormonal troubles. Like, I don't know, like too much testosterone, but you know, it is what it is as far as this film goes. So he has a really cool fight with the ninjas at the end of the film. That's probably like the best possible place he uses his natural abilities. And obviously, I did miss out on talking about the Hulk, but he plays such a small role in this film that it almost feels like he didn't need to be in this film. Like, having him in this film just felt like it was like more than enough. It was just more than enough. Like, he could have figured out his own stuff, like with the power, not the power, he could have figured out how to control his new abilities without the Hulk. The Hulk didn't need to be in this film. Like, honestly, I have nothing really that much against the Hulk, but he was just here to sell tickets, I guess. But this film didn't need the Hulk. Like, it just didn't. And I'm gonna say this because it sounds crazy, but how does Spider-Man nearly die from a 50 cal but gets punched by the Hulk and survive? Seriously, how? You don't even have to answer it, but that's literally what I've been asking myself after watching this movie. So, yeah, there's a lot of craziness going on in this film. And it's interesting, like, when you watch it, but then you really start thinking about it, and it's like, there's just some things in here that truly just don't make a whole bunch of sense. But the parts that I do like, they are good. You know, I really like that Spider-Man has his friends back, as far as it seems, that his powers have evolved, that he's more stronger on his own, even though he still gets help. But overall, I would say this film, like, even though it's not like my personal favorite, I still think it holds up well. I just don't think it's 90% well. I think it's more like 80, you know, borderline 70s. And it's really because there's just so much going on in this film, and I don't like what happens in No Way Home was the spell. Like, I just think that that part, like, if it was done better, like, it wouldn't have really affected how I viewed this film, but because it did, it ruined pretty much the first 30 minutes, I would say, at least. And not even just 30 minutes, but it just ruined the whole interaction with MJ for most of the film was me. Like, it's like, dude, like, just say who you are already. You know, at some points it was kind of funny at him lying about his name, but in other parts it was like, just say who you are, man. Like, you're already, like, you already have said to other people that you're Peter Parker, so this whole secret identity stuff just doesn't make sense. You know, everybody knew who each Avenger was, honestly. It wasn't even like a secret. And that's another thing that it's like, why did it make it such a big deal in No Way Home and Brand New Day? I don't know. Because when it was the Avengers, it didn't matter at all if he took off his mask or not. And all of a sudden it did when Mysterio pulled up. So that's all I got for today's video. This movie gets an 8 out of 10 for me. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about my favorite Spider-Man. So if you're a Spider-Man fan, stay tuned for that. And if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.